I'm surprised by the questions that beginners ask me, although I was once in their shoes myself, so I understand. Let's break everything down step by step, taking our time, so that you have a complete and thorough understanding when you watch a tutorial. This way, you won't run into situations where you can't find what they're showing you, or you don't know where the author got a particular node or function from, or why you're getting an error while everything seems to work perfectly fine for them. We'll make sure to cover all the details so you feel confident and prepared, and so on. So let's immediately spare ourselves most of these issues, if not all mistakes. The very first thing I want to mention, and this is quite important, is the situation that arises when something is shown to you, perhaps in a tutorial or by someone else, but you simply can't find it yourself. For example, you might see something called absolute world position, that's the exact name. Or maybe you see value, and so on. But despite searching, you just can't find it here in your own workspace. It's simply not there, no matter how hard you look. Or, or perhaps you're searching for other functions, which are often highlighted in blue because they're material functions. And just like with these red ones, or really any of them, you just can't find them either, no matter what you try. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is when you try to connect some texture somewhere in your material and you get some kind of error message. You seem to be doing everything exactly the same as shown, or you're trying to adapt something for your own material, making an effort to integrate it properly, but some errors still come up, and of course you don't know what to do next. That's what I wanted to talk about in this section. Sometimes, even though you follow the tutorial exactly as shown step by step, for some reason things don't work out the same way for you. You get errors and so on, and it can be really confusing. This can happen, for example, when I show how a vector is built in the tutorial. These nodes, which are used in the process, have their own specific settings, and you need to make sure you repeat them exactly as shown in the tutorial, paying close attention to every detail. Sometimes the authors just say, call transform vectors, connect it here and there, and show something on the screen, but as beginners, you don't fully understand what needs to be done or why it's being done that way. You just add the nodes they show you and think that's enough, but in reality, these nodes have their own settings, and you need to be very clear about that, making sure you don't miss anything. For example, under the name, it says here tangent space and world space. These are its settings, and they are very important. Tangent space is converted to world space. That's its default setting, and you need to repeat them exactly as shown here, just like with the sign node, which also has its own settings that must be matched. As for the nodes you can't find, the ones shown in the tutorial, there are two things to consider. First, if these are red nodes, then in my experience, there are only two nodes that are named differently. The first is world space, and if I remember correctly, the second is view property. So always double check the names and settings of the nodes, and don't hesitate to pause the tutorial and look closely at what is being shown, because sometimes the smallest detail can make a big difference in whether your project works as expected or not. Their actual names, as you can see, for this one it's view property, and for this one, it's world position. As you can tell, the real actual name of a node is shown when you click on the node. Here in the corner it says material expression, and it will either be blank or display the node's real name. For example, here with same color, when you click on it, it says material expression same color, so that's its actual name. For some nodes, nothing is written there. For example, with pixel normal, nothing is shown, which means that pixel normal is the real name, just as it's written here. That's its real name, that's what it's actually called in the system. You can use that specific name to search for it in the documentation or within the software itself. However, for some of them, as I showed you earlier, like the example of absolute rod position, you might not be able to find it if you enter the exact name as it's shown here, word for word. For those particular cases, you need to select the node and check its real underlying name here in the interface. For example, view property, as I mentioned before, actually has a different name in the system, and that's the name that's displayed here as well. It's actually very simple and straightforward. Either the real actual name will be displayed right here in this spot, or it will be called and referred to by the same thing, the same name right here as well. Okay, so that's the very first and most important point to keep in mind. Now, moving on to the second point, if we're talking about these blue ones, just to get ahead a bit and clarify, these are what are known as material functions, specifically user-defined functions. In this particular case, what I've selected here are functions that the developers have already prepared and provided for us, but you also have the ability to create your own custom functions. That is, you can simply right-click in the Materials tab, choose to create a new material function, and whatever you decide to name this material, you see, that's our user-defined function. In this specific case, it's currently empty. What I want to emphasize and make clear is if you don't see or can't find a function in the search that the author or creator is using, it means that this particular function either doesn't exist here, or to put it more accurately, it's located in the engine's content folder right here. If you don't see it, click on Settings and check the box for Show Engine Content. For example, these two material functions that you see here, you will, or rather, are very likely to need them in the future, but you can't find them here. If we try to search for them here, you see we can't find these functions. You need to look for them specifically in the engine folder. We enter them right here, and we see in this particular case the functions we were specifically looking for. However, even if they are not present in the engine, it is most likely that these are functions created and implemented by the developers themselves. That is, the authors whose tutorials you are following or whose work you are currently studying. These functions are their own custom ones, just like I previously showed you how we can create our own functions. They did the same and added them. So in this case, if you cannot find them, they are either in engine content or they're custom functions. The next thing I wanted to mention, and it's quite important, is these pins. They can be either white or gray. Gray pins are optional, while white ones are required. That is, with white pins, we must connect something to them, otherwise the node will not function as intended. If we try to use this node, for example, and connect it here, we'll get an error. Here, we'll get a warning that we need to input something. And yes, I copied it from there, as you can see, and added it here, and now the names have changed a bit. More precisely, the data type that was shown in quotes here has changed. Let me go back. You see, in quotes, a certain data type is displayed, but now it's gone. So when we duplicate, this kind of unpleasant nuance happens. However, this rule applies to all. White means required, gray means optional. To summarize, always remember that white pins indicate a mandatory connection, while gray pins are not strictly necessary, and you can leave them unconnected if you wish. This distinction is crucial for understanding how to properly use nodes in this context, and it helps prevent errors or warnings during your workflow.